Greetings and welcome to this episode on Geeks First. Today, we cover a myriad of interesting links, references, and websites that'll help guide you through your flesh and blood journey. All that and more, right now. One of the most interesting things that I have noticed as the Flesh and Blood game has developed is the community around the game itself. Several people have created interesting and very useful websites as well as document repositories in both GitHub as well as individual websites that you can reference that'll give you a leg up or a way to keep track of maybe some interesting information, data, or news that you might otherwise have not noticed. While there are a ton of Discord groups and Facebook pages that you might be able to follow, I highly recommend that as we go through these lists, you bookmark some of these pages because I reference them quite a bit. Now, not all of these are going to be for everybody, and not necessarily all of these links or pages will be something that might interest you. Some of them are more financial, some of them are more technical and deck-based, some of them are lore-centric. Overall, I hope to provide several links in this video that will help guide you in some interesting ways that you can interact with the Flesh and Blood community and stay up to date on some of the latest information. Also, before we get too much further, I'd like to say that if you can, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. We're getting close to our 250 view subscriber count here, so thumbs up and let's get right to it. So we're going to jump to a computer screen and we're going to showcase off some of these links, and in no particular order, we shall begin. Alright, we're over here at the computer, and the first link I recommend you check out is the official Flesh and Blood website, FAB TCG.com. On Flesh and Blood's website, there are a myriad of interesting articles as well as game tips and game formats, collector center, lore articles, ways to find events, different retailers, locations, and just a plethora of data that I highly recommend you check out because they do an excellent job of giving all this information pretty much freely to everyone so that you can digest and check out what you have. So definitely check out Flesh and Blood's FABTCG.com. This is definitely the first go-to site, especially in their latest articles. So you might have seen my latest video on Outsiders. This is where a majority of that information came from. So go check my video out and also read their article to determine what is in Outsiders. Next up, a site I don't typically use that much because I'm not a Twitter aficionado, but Twitter, for twitter.com/FABTCG, is the official Flesh and Blood Twitter's page. And while I don't think I could accurately give you the detailed information that you would need, right now there are 14.6 thousand followers, and this typically gives some pretty interesting information, especially around times where you would see events coming up, and if there are bits of corrections or just kind of interesting news articles, they typically do show up in here. But yep, this would be a place I would recommend checking out. And if you have Twitter, feel free to follow them. I would say that they would like that. There's also other, you'll start seeing content creators on the side over here, which I'll get to in my YouTube section. But they probably do have a presence here on Twitter as well. I do have a Twitter page, Geeks First, but I don't actually use it near as much as I should, and I'm trying to learn how to navigate Twitter. But for the most part, I would say if you'd like to follow me, please feel free to subscribe. I'll be trying to leverage this more as I go forward. Next up on the list, we're going to talk about Facebook and some Facebook groups. The first one here is the Flesh and Blood fan page, currently at about 11.2 thousand members. On this page, you'll find a very varying array of memes, interesting posts, discussion topics. It's actually quite interesting. You do have to have a Facebook account in order to access this, but for the most part, there's some pretty interesting topics that do show up here. And I would say, more often than not, I would recommend that if you do join these groups, that if you kind of just remain a silent observer, you can understand a lot of what the community is looking for, as well as possibly find some new and updated YouTube channels that you may have not ever discovered before, as well as people that are showing off collections, as you can kind of see as I scroll through these posts, and there will end on a meme. One thing to also mention is that you might be able to look for Flesh and Blood space the name of your local area to find a group of people that might have a Facebook page as well. I have discovered that the Facebook page for my local area is not as busy as the Discord, which is something that we'll cover here in just a second. But you might have good luck finding your individuals that you might be able to connect with on Facebook. However, I have noticed that the Flesh and Blood community tends to navigate or go toward Discord more, especially for active discussions, as it is more like a forum. Moving right along, next we have Discord. And in Discord, you can see that there are a number of channels that I have here that I kind of monitor and just read about. As an example, my local Flesh and Blood Indie or Indiana group is primarily where I get to talk about folks for all sorts of stuff, and I post my videos that are promotion. There's also different Discords for like the M&R podcast, Sloop Dupe, who is obviously a YouTuber, DM Armada, Red Zone Rogue. Other neighboring states have stuff, Flesh and Blood Unseals, Salty Whale, and then the largest one I'd like to talk about here is the Flesh and Blood TCG community. I will attempt to try and get a invite link to this in the video so that you can join this, but otherwise, if you were to just type in Flesh and Blood TCG community, this is some of the most interesting overall, like, I guess, conversation. You can learn so much here. I haven't even fully tapped into the potential of this myself, but there are strategy and deck building locations that are in here. There's marketplaces for buy, sell, and trade. There's YouTube promotion videos and looking for games, which we'll cover in a little bit when we get to the online playing. But overall, there's lore, there's rules and questions. It's a fantastic place to meet and work with individuals, even just reading up on different topics. I enjoy personally to go to the Fab community content as I can see who's posting what videos and kind of get an idea of what topics might be trending at the time. As you can see, I haven't caught up here recently because there's quite a bit of videos I haven't watched, so sounds like after I get done doing this video, I'll be watching quite a bit of videos just to keep up with what is currently happening in the world of Flesh and Blood. Next, but certainly not least, YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this on. And as you can see, there are a lot of content creators that produce high-quality content. So individuals like Sloop Dupe or Tolarian Community College, which typically was traditionally more of a Magic the Gathering channel, but has now kind of gotten into the hybrid of both Flesh and Blood and a couple other TCGs. A very, very well-respected and extremely thoroughly and very well-worded YouTube channel. I highly recommend checking him out. Dice Commandos as well. You have Channel Fireball, which does quite a bit of stuff. And in this photo here, this is actually Red Zone Rogue, but there are several content creators that write content for them. You, of course, have Fluke and Box, and then Tall Timmy. They're down in Australia, or up in Australia. I don't really know my geography as probably as well as I should. You have the official Flesh and Blood TCG as well. There's a DM Armada one right there. Again, I don't have probably enough time in the world to go through all of these, but, you know, Alpha Investments, there's another Sloop. You know, he's really doing some top-notch quality videos right now as well. And, you know, I have my channel out there. There are other individuals like Overload Gaming. The list goes on. Sneep has recently been rising up as far as I've been watching some of his content. I'll try to maybe put an infographic that has enough individuals, kind of their photos of their YouTube channel. But needless to say, there is no end to content for the YouTube world, and I do highly recommend spending some time finding the style of channel that you might like. As an example, We Make Best is also one that has been coming up, and I've noticed that they are more of a, I don't want to say a meme channel, they're not, but they do a lot of highly edited videos that are not my personal style of content, but if I was listening to them from an auditory standpoint, they are kind of the style that I would listen to more like a podcast, but I would check them out. They have some pretty good content. Again, like I said, there's just so many content creators to go over that I don't think I have the time. But if you were to just type in Flesh and Blood, or another search term is FAB TCG, these are the two search terms that will give you the most bang for buck when it comes to finding individuals that have YouTube content. Team Covenant, as an example, did not show up under Flesh and Blood, but they came up with Fab TCG. Kitchen Table TCG is another example. He actually, I believe, has exited the Flesh and Blood scene, but he does have some content from earlier on that you can check out. Decks and Drafts, Arsenal Pass, Noxious, there's Red Zone Rogue, DM Armada again. I'm just kind of very quickly going through here, but as I said, you know, even Kasumi Gaming, there's a lot of really excellent people out there. Go check them all out, definitely. Next up, and definitely something I did not expect, but Reddit. Yeah, Reddit giving you useful information. That was something I was kind of questioning myself, but frankly, sometimes under the Reddit FAB TCG location, you'll find golden gems like this one, A Brief Guide to Choosing Your Hero in Classic Constructed Dynasty Edition by Mal Zenith. And frankly, this is an excellent, absolutely amazing bit of read. And I do plan on trying to do a video kind of talking about his post or her post here, and essentially trying to put this into a video format that might be digestible for people that don't want to go to Reddit and don't want to read this very long article. However, this is a fantastic article. I have read it multiple times, and I have basically learned a lot of information off of that. If we go to the main Flesh and Blood TCG post, you'll see stuff like, as an example, they call me crazy, but Surgical Strike was confirmed short printed. Well, that was a brand new thing that had just come out, but even though it was unintentional, as they have stated in here, there's a bunch of just nuggets of information that if you want to be the latest and greatest up to date, definitely assume that it will end up on Reddit. So you can find some useful pieces of technology, such as some like combat chain questions or just rules engagement in here. But sometimes I would say, not all information out here is as accurate as you might hope. But, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. But for the most part, this is another location I would look to grab information. Next on our list, I'm going to refer to this group as the card creation or deck research. So as an example, let's say I had a Dash character and I wanted to look up Dash. On FabDB, you could type in Dash, and you would start to get cards that are related with this. Now, all of them are complex search engines, which you can click on Syntax Help, and use these syntax forms to look for cards that meet certain requirements. These sites, such as FabDB, Fabrary, this is called CCG Database, and Spellvoid, as well as Fabrec, which they say beta, but Fabrec. All 5 of these sites, in my opinion, are basically super useful to find not only the latest decks that exist, they have very interesting, sometimes articles, as well as, again, if you were to search on different sites, there are different statistics and various things that you can do to determine, such as how, let's say, Fi's Blitz deck is performing, and just so much data. I do not think I have the ability to properly convey the amount of information that is available at your fingertips. So I'm not as familiar with this CCG database, so I can't speak to them, but Spellvoid, oops, I probably spelled it wrong. That's probably why. Oh, there you go. So it just took a bit, but it came up. And then as an example, you can click on these. Most of them will have links to like the places you can buy cards, which I'll talk about here in a bit. So like TCG Player, eBay, or your LGS. And then Fabrec here is, as an example, these are a bunch of deck lists with top rated cards and how people are doing it. So again, a lot of information, almost information overload, but nonetheless, very, very good information. I highly recommend bookmarking every single one of these. And typically, I've noticed, to shout out to Fabrary here, they do a spoiler following, and there is a gentleman, or I believe that is Artifice, or the official set tracker. So there is basically a, oops, I don't want to go to the Discord, sorry. I want to go to the set tracker here. There is a Google Sheet that they are doing that basically follows as cards get spoiled, so you can kind of start seeing what's coming out. So as of right now, these are the current cards available that have been spoiled, or even cards that are thought of or discussed as possibilities and outsiders. Again, take this with a grain of salt, because obviously unless they have been officially spoiled, such as the Heroes and Codex of Frailty here, a lot of this is just speculation, but it's super fun to be a kind of right in there as it's coming out. And I highly, highly applaud them for keeping that, and that is one of the sites that I love to check out, especially during when spoiler season is kicking off. All right, next up, I'm going to call this section Articles and Details. Now, Channel Fireball, like them, love them, hate them, whatever your opinion on them is, they do have some amazing articles. And in this section here, which is strategy.channelfireball.com, under the Flesh and Blood header, there are a lot of articles that you can read. Now, I don't remember if these are under a paywall, but as an example, here is one that's How to Play Flesh and Blood, the Ultimate Beginner's Guide. Now, this did come out in 2020, so it is a tad older, but a lot of the concepts and information that's contained within here is still valid to this day. And a lot of this is very useful for new players trying to determine exactly how to play the game of Flesh and Blood. I will be making a video here shortly that will be covering a lot of this data in a consolidated video format that will help be able to convey how to play the game of Flesh and Blood. So, as an example, in articles, this is another Fab with Freya, and again, quite a bit of very interesting articles that exist. Another one here is the Wraith Times. I do know that this, I believe, group has, again, some very stellar articles that you can read over. I do frequent here when I have time, but obviously, you know, when you start looking at the amount of data and information that's out there, it's really hard to kind of do everything at once. Now, I'm not quite 100% sure if this is an article site anymore or if this is more so a database site, so this might be in the wrong category here, but the Pitch Zone is another one that you can look at. But I recommend, again, the Wraith Times, Fab with Freya, and Channel Fireball for some good news. One of the most interesting and possibly things that I would have actually enjoyed to do, because I started trying to do this personally, but this individual really hit a home run here. If you're a fan of lore, I cannot stress enough how legendarystories.net is your go-to place other than the official Flesh and Blood website, because you want to support Flesh and Blood, where you can get all of the different news articles and stories and have a search feature. So as an example, when we were learning about the codex, if you search for the word codex, or let's say dash as an example, because I do like dash, it has indexed all of these articles, and this was not something that was easily done on the Flesh and Blood's website. However, here it was able for me to kind of do some homework on basically different keywords and dive into the lore and see where things are interrelated. So a super awesome website. I thoroughly enjoy coming here, and I definitely recommend checking out legendarystories.net. And absolutely no version of this list could be done without this awesome Learn to Play kit by Joey. And if you've never heard of this individual, he has a YouTube channel called Decks and Drafts. And by far, hands down, this was one of the things that when I first got into Flesh and Blood, I found this, and it is fantastic. Now, not only is this well put together and has been maintained, and it sounds like, based on chatting with him, will continue to be maintained for in at least some form going forward, so it's up to date. But it's also a way for you to find deck lists and ways to get people to play the game, as well as kind of add-ons, bolt-ons, and different ways to kind of use just even chaff or extra cards you have to create decks so that you'd be able to play with you and your friends. Or if you're an LGS store and you want to build some stuff up, you can obviously go through your distributor and buy some Blitz decks. But if there are other characters, especially at the time for like the original 4 from WTR, who do not have official Blitz decks at this point, well, technically Katsu actually will, but that's an outsider's thing and I won't get into that. If you really wanted to, you could build some of these decks and then provide them to your local players. So it's awesome, and this is just such a fantastically done. I mean, I cannot say the highest regards to how this has turned out, because this is just phenomenal. And again, I won't bore you with all the details here, but needless to say, there is a bunch of information that you can gather from this, and it just is phenomenal. It includes just just read it. I highly recommend that. This is going to be even a great way for you to know what character types you would enjoy to play. Starting to wrap up this video here, we're on one of the last things that we'll talk about, and this is the online clients. Like it, love it, hate it, or not, these clients are now kind of basically integral to playing and finding matchmaking for Flesh and Blood across the world. And while it is best to play in person and definitely experience that magic that is the game across a table with a human, there are times where playtesting and just checking out a deck that maybe you don't own, especially with cards, is where Talishar.net, Felt Table, and the Steam game Tabletop Simulator are 3 options for you to be able to play with others. Now, before I really dived into Talishar as an example, which formerly I believe used to be called Flesh and Blood Online, Felt Table I have not done much experience with, but Tabletop Simulator was really fun, but the interface was really kludgy. The biggest thing about the Talishar interface is that it is super simple, and you can basically just load up deck slugs, which is their term for using things from, like, as an example, FabDB. So a lot of this ecosystem is very integrated, and you'd be able to basically play and test out different decks. There's also statistics and very interesting modes, like roguelike here. So I won't go into that, but again, more things to check out. But I highly recommend checking out the online play if you have a small window of time and want to try to get a game in. There's always people, as an example right now as I'm filming, there are 45 games in progress with a whole slew of different people. And if I were to want to spectate, as an example, this is basically what the interface looks like. So these 2 individuals are playing, and that is what Felt Table / Talishar looks like. So 3, 2, 1. Okay, so this is another page that exists as a subdomain of Fab TCG. It's called judge.fabtcg.com. And frankly, this is for folks that want to learn more about, essentially being a judge, or looking at trying to take their certification exams to get to the judge level. Now, I will not sign in, and I will not, showcase anything that I don't believe I'm allowed to not show. But if you want more technical information, there is a forum in here for judges to discuss things. I do recommend checking this out. And then also another kind of random odd category, I couldn't figure out where to throw things in, which I'm not necessarily trying to promote or not promote other people, but the quality on these Fab Metal tokens is just phenomenal. So, bless you. I would definitely say that if you have an opportunity to possibly look at some of these, they are just top-notch. So those are the last 2 pages currently in this listing that I have, and I'll see you in just a second. Wow, wasn't that awesome? Well, thank you so much for tuning into the video today. I really hope that all this information finds you well. And any other links or descriptions you might have, feel free to share them in the comment section below. I know that this list is not a complete and comprehensive list, and there's just frankly too many interesting avenues that you could look up information, and there are some that I probably do not know about, especially ones that are in other languages. So again, for the community's sake, feel free to share them in the comment section below, and I'll work to pin those comments so that others can benefit from all the information in this wonderful Flesh and Blood community. Until next time, have a fantastic week, and continue to enjoy the fantastic game of Flesh and Blood. Peace.